best stretches to do before a run. I'll kind of tell you where best recommended running shoes support those joints, and that creates load. Hey y'all, Dr. Connie here. We're answering questions that we've gotten off of mostly Instagram, but it's the questions that you guys have asked, so we're here to share those answers. All right, so our first question is from Bree11. How long does it take for one to be able to run their pace faster without feeling tired? And this is a great question, and honestly, we could have like a whole discussion on this. I'll kind of tell you where the most common training issues that we see, why people have a hard time getting to feeling better running at their faster pace. So obviously to run faster, we need to run faster. The problem comes when people are like, hey, I'm gonna run, say like my 5 miles. My goal is to get 5 miles in this pace and feel good with it. And they go out and every time they run their 5 miles and they run it as fast as they can, and then they feel pretty fatigued afterwards and they keep doing that. And a lot of times that creates an injury. What we need to do is run smaller chunks, much faster than that pace, and kind of repeat those in intervals. Where say if you were doing a track workout, a speed workout, you would run a much shorter distance, maybe a 400, which is 2 laps around, so a half a mile. And you would run it a certain percentage faster than that pace that you're running the 5 miles at. And what pace is that? We actually did a challenge where we had like some training plans of if you were training for a particular type of race, what some of those workouts would look like. And so feel free to go back to the challenge and kind of look through those plans and see what meets your goals and fits with what your runs are. But you do those shorter runs faster, a little bit faster than like that race pace that you're aiming for. And then on your longer runs, you've got some easy runs built in that are really made to build your base. Okay, so it's a combination of those faster interval runs, longer, easier runs to build that base, and then that tends to make you feel less tired and really have like the metabolic systems. The mitochondria are like the powerhouses of your cells. And so having good mitochondria and also being able to get your body used to pushing that faster pace too tend to be the things that help you go faster. So that's, again, we could talk so much about this depending on your specifics too. So that's always a good conversation to have over in the online community too. All right, next question from LA Gina Girl. Why do I have ankle pain that comes and goes only on the right side? Great question. Because sometimes we're like, hey, why is it just one side versus the other side? And then also, why does it come and go? And so first, let's talk about the side. So a lot of times we're not exactly symmetric one side versus the other, and we go through life with tiny asymmetries that usually aren't a problem unless we're challenging ourselves. And then as we get through that challenge, it starts to pull out and your body's like, hey, red flag, like I've got something going on over here. So with the ankle, you actually see, we'll get our foot out here. There are lots of joints that move at the ankle. We've got our little foot guy over here. So lots of joints, yes, yes, yes. And when we're running, we expect certain motions out of those joints, and that creates load on the tendons and ligaments as they go around too. So say that one of these joints just gets a little bit stuck, right? And it's not moving well. Well, if that joint is stuck, say this one in the back is a very common one that gets stuck, or this one on top gets stuck, then you're not getting the normal motions of the foot, that normal amount of pronation and supination that go with normal loading. Once we're missing out on that normal motion, that changes how the tendons are being loaded. And you might get more stress on one set of tendons and less lengthening of a different set of tendons, right? So it all depends on where in the ankle are you feeling it, and is there something that's causing it to be different? Joints are one thing that can go wrong. Muscle strength is another thing. Sometimes we develop asymmetry in the muscles and you're stronger on one side than the other side. So when we come in the clinic, we tend to test people on that to figure out like, why is this happening? Because it's very different for different people. So I can't give you a super specific answer because it would depend on what's going on with you. And then the question, why does it come and go? So a lot of times it's certain activities that can create more stress on certain muscles, tendons, ligaments. So for example, running uphill, there's a lot more demand on your calf muscles to help push you uphill than when you're going downhill. When you're going downhill, we tend to have more pressure on the muscles in the front of the ankle, and that's when you tend to be more susceptible to the shin splints, the type that's in the front, the anterior shin splint. There's also a medial shin splint. So that's just one example of hills being the thing that challenges your muscles differently on the front versus the back. Also, if you're on uneven surfaces, so a lot of times when I'm asking people, I'm saying, hey, are you on a trail? Are you road running? Are you on a particular side? All of those things factor into like why sometimes, but not other times. Cool. And again, we could go on and on, but I want to at least give you a general answer for that. So if you're at home, even testing your ankle strength by doing like calf raises and seeing how many you can do on one side versus the other side is at least a good place to start with ankles and see like, do I have any major asymmetries that I need to work on here? Next question from San Marcos 612. Any recommendations on beginner programs or running clubs for beginners? Absolutely. So if you're just getting into running, the first biggest thing I would say is don't just try and go out and run a long distance. Start with short intervals. Do a run for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, run for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, or even less than that. I've got some interval programs we start with just 1 minute at a time or from one light post to the next. So when you're looking at just getting into a running program, that gives your body time to adapt to the impact of that loading with a lot less likelihood of getting hurt. And then you basically just take those walking intervals and shorten them up, or the run intervals and lengthen them. And then run clubs for beginners. The awesome thing that I love about our run clubs is that there are people of all paces in almost all of the clubs, right? A lot of the clubs have kind of your fast runners, your medium speed runners, your slower runners, and your walkers. So there's usually people in between places that will, you'll be able to fit with somebody. And so we've got a lot of good ones in the area. Check out on the online running community, we have a list of all of the run clubs, and you can find one. They've got little notes about kind of what each one is about. It's got their Instagram handles. That way you can find one that you're like, okay, I think I kind of jive with what they're doing. And it depends if you're a morning runner or an evening runner too. So for evenings, at least here in Rancho Cucamonga, we've got run day nights. It's over here. We go a little farther out, more toward Pomona. Tuesdays, we've got Pomona Valley runners. Wednesday, we've got Claremont Trotters or Lululemon's run club. We've got a lot of different options depending on what days you're available to. So if you reach out to me, if you DM me, then we can talk a little bit more and figure out like what would be the best run club around for you to start with too. But they are all awesome people. All right, 323 is our next question. Best recommended running shoes for women. Okay, I'm gonna say it also depends. For women, we go through a little bit different things than the guys go through with our feet, especially if we're talking about pregnancy, hormonal changes. A lot of times with pregnancy, the feet tend to like collapse down and pronate more because the ligaments and everything around the joint get a little bit looser. And then as you get stronger, you can actually kind of create some more stability around that too. So best recommended running shoes for women. I'm gonna say it depends on your foot type, because some women are much more flexible in their feet, and so having something that provides more stability is gonna be helpful. Each brand of shoe has one that has a little bit more support in it. Also, if you find that a shoe that you like, but you don't feel like you're getting quite that support under your foot the way that you need it, there are also inserts that can go into the shoes. You don't necessarily need to go with custom inserts right away. A lot of times I'll have people get something like a Superfeet, an over-the-counter orthotic, and they've got these nice dynamic run ones that still have a little bit of give to them, but also that support. And so it's finding that balance for you. Always try it on, see how it works for you. When you are looking at a shoe and you're trying to figure out which of these 3 different ones is gonna be the best for me, test how you move in it. Like, yes, there's walking in it and running in it, but you can even do like a single leg squat. So one of the tests that I do, I'll go to people at the shoe store sometimes and do it. You won't be able to totally see me in this, but even standing in your shoe and doing like a little squat down and up, and if you're like all wobbly all over the place, that's not the best shoe for you. If you can find one that you're more stable, that the knee stays straight, the hips not doing any crazy things, that you can like balance well in, that's gonna be a better shoe for you than one that you can't balance well in. So we wanna find the shoe that you not only feels good, but functions well for your foot. And I wish I could give you like a specific shoe of a specific brand, but everyone's foot is a little bit different too. So we find that some people really love like, oh my gosh, the Hoka Clifton is like my favorite shoe to run, and other people hate it because their foot's just a little bit different. So it depends on your foot and your strength going up and down too. All right, our next question from Yuki Arti is diastasis recti while running, is it safe? So I actually had a diastasis recti before even getting pregnant, and then it got a little bit more while pregnant. If you're focusing on good core engagement while you're running and you're gradually progressing your running, it's not like we went from 0 to 5 miles. We went from like very short intervals with walk breaks to give your muscles a chance to reset, and then went on and off like that and gradually built up. Yes, it's safe. If you want a medical professional's help getting through that type of progression, for sure reach out. But the diastasis recti is basically like a little bit of a splitting in the center of the abs. So if you think about your 6-pack muscles, and it's like 3 on each side, and there's just a teeny split in there. So when you're doing core work, you want to focus on pulling in as you were doing that core work and like creating this core set of core stability with those abs. You have lots of ab muscles. You've got some that go straight, some that go around this way, and then others that go at diagonals. We want all of those layers working together to provide that stability. So with the diastasis recti, it can be safe. Also, if you're not engaging your core and you're just going and running really, really far and your body's not ready for that, you don't have good strength in your glutes, quads, calves, those supporting muscles, then it can be unsafe. But I've had a lot of runners that we work on this, we get the core engaged the right way, and it actually ends up being good for them. Like it ends up providing this core stability that they otherwise would have not had, and the diastasis recti would have just kept getting pulled on instead of being stabilized and supported. So great question. All right, next from Kalsikuin. Sorry if I'm butchering these handles over here. But best stretches to do before a run, and should we stretch after a run? Perfect, good question. We also did some videos on this over in our challenge in the online community, so I would head over there to look at the full information, but I'll give you kind of like a quick recap. So stretches before your runs, you want them to be dynamic stretches. You want to teach those muscles to move in and out of positions, not to just hold and lengthen. If we hold and just lengthen that muscle is not going to perform very well when we go to move it when we're running. So some examples of stretches to do before a run. I like to do some for hip mobility. I also like to do some to activate muscles in the back of we call it the posterior chain, your glutes, hamstrings, calves, those types of muscles. And they should go from kind of slower exercises up to faster and more dynamic exercises. So for the full video on those exercises, check out the running community, but as just an example, like one for hip mobility we'll do is like bringing knees up to chest, because if your hips are really tight after a whole day of sitting, then they won't move very well and it's hard to get glutes activated. Doing one to stretch the hamstring is like stepping back and going here. That's a good one to do, like scoops, to get these muscles lengthened out, but then we're also coming back up, and you can even think about squeezing these muscles back here. Then doing something more dynamic like high knees, butt kickers can also be really good. And then I like to do some for the feet. Whoa, move over here so you can see me. Where we're like hopping forward and back, side to side, and rotating. That way feet and ankles are really ready to move and ready to help you. So we've definitely got more than that, but that's kind of a quick idea of some things you can do before the run to start feeling good. And then stretching after. If you're someone who gets really tight on runs, yes, you need to stretch after. Some people run and don't get that tight. It's probably only like 15%-ish if I had to put a number on it. But most of us can benefit from some stretches after the run. Those can be things like quad stretches, glute stretches. Depending on your running style, it'll change where you get tight. So stretch the things that feel tight. Calves are often something that get tight. Side note, yes, a lot of people will stretch their calves and be like, I could stretch my calves all day long and they're not getting any looser. Oftentimes, there's a strength issue that your calves are not strong enough to handle the activity that you're putting them through, so their reaction is to tighten up and stay tight. if you're strengthening and improving your mechanics, even in the way that you walk, then you can get lots more little stretches based on your walking mechanics and the way that you're moving all day long. So those are a lot of times when someone comes in with tight calves, we need to look at why are the calves tight, and then what are the things we need to do to work on it. Sometimes the fascia over the calf is also really tight, and that we have to loosen up the muscle and the fascia to get things moving well. Next, CD40A, when to ice and when to heat. So in general, heat tends to bring more blood flow to the area, and so if you've got a muscle that's really tight, that you're trying to warm up, you're about to go do some exercise and you need it to get moving better, then heat can be a really good option. If you have an acute injury, I sprained my ankle, I strained a muscle, something that just you went through a trauma, that tends to be when we use the ice. And after you ice, you do not go and start running on it. The ice is to help reduce that inflammation, reduce that swelling. It decreases the amount of blood flow going there for just a short period of time to help bring some inflammation down. That's when we use the ice. Otherwise, we want to use heat to bring more blood flow, more circulation, and warm up the tissues, especially if we're getting ready to do something. And that's why even when we're doing exercises, a lot of times we're using exercises to warm up and heat the body before we go out and do activity. So that's kind of leads back to our best stretches to do before the run too. We want to warm up the body, get things circulating and moving before we go out and hit our stuff. All right, so those are our questions for today. Please, hey, leave some feedback or comments on if there are things that you find helpful or something brought up another question. I know a lot of these we're trying to give you like a good, easy answer, but there usually are layers to it. And I could talk, honestly, some of these questions I could talk about for a long time, but we want to make sure we get you guys some like brief, quick answers here. Until next time, keep moving and stay healthy.